Welcome back to part 6 of our second series of how to cut gemstones, where we are cutting this large blue topaz. It's a natural topaz, natural color, no treatments, comes from Brazil, and we're hoping for a 200 carat stone. We're cutting on the Ultratec V5 machine, which is my newest machine that I'm recommending to people for many reasons, and we've gone through a few of them, but a lot of little things, you know, like the water tank. I've always had issues with getting my water to run at the rate I want it to. I mean, you can get a high rate, and more importantly, I can get a very slow rate. So when I'm working with slurries, particularly cerium oxide on the spectral laps, which I use often for quartz and opals, I can get a slow enough drip that there's enough water there, but it doesn't wash all the slurry off the lap. And it also drains real well. You know, I've had problems with my other machines getting them to drain right. And, you know, these are little things, but they've just really done a lot to make this machine effortless. You know, they have a very, very strong mast. You know, it's just built so solid. My other machines, I can shake the mast and it will literally move. This does not move at all. So just a very strongly built machine. And one of the most important features, of course, is the digital angle display, which is right here. You know, this is very, very useful, you know, not so much on this stone, because this stone only has 2 facets that match. Everything else is, you know, on a stone where you have multiple facets that match, that's where this digital angle dial really comes into use. And also when you're working with all these new computer-aided designs that everybody's working on these days, and they're giving angles in 1/100th of a degree, and this digital angle display will recreate down to 1/100th of a degree. So it's just a really good machine, and let's get to using it. So today we're going to start by pre-polishing this topaz, and what I'm using to pre-polish is the 600 lightning lap, which has actually worked very well for me, and we can actually polish with 50,000 diamond from this lap. So we're pretty much, this is pretty much a 4-step cutting process from probably, I think we started about a 200 grit and went to 400 grit, and now we're going to this 600 lightning lap, which is really like a 1200 or an 1800 is how it really cuts. And then we'll go right to polish with the batt lap and 15 or 50,000 diamond. So a few things I wanted to do on this stone. I want to get the 3 rows of step facets to be more similar than they are. So we're going to start with the first row, which was at 50 degrees, and I'm probably going to cut it 49 degrees just to try and get it move up a little bit in an attempt to get all 3 of these rows the same. So we'll use the fine adjustment and set this to 49 degrees. Oops. Like I said, 49 degrees. One thing you always want to keep in mind is that when you pick this stone up, you don't want it hitting the center post here. So just make sure you're far enough back. So I've lowered the angle to 48 because it wasn't going up as far as I wanted to. You know, this is going to add a little more to my time, but I think it's going to end up a better stone when we're finished. And there you can see our first facet. You know, the sides of it don't look perfectly straight up and down because we did change the angle, but that'll get straightened out as we cut the other facets. So now is when you're going to want to get your facets as perfect as possible, because you won't be able to change them in polishing. You know, little facets you can change, but facets that are this large and this hard of a stone, polishing, you're really not going to make any movement in the size of a facet. So this is the time to get everything straight and ready for polish. You'll notice that now on this facet that is 6 over from my 96, that on the gauge now it's 49 degrees. I am cutting these facets all to the same height. I'm not making any adjustments on the angle. So what was 48 on 96, on 6 and 90, the angle has moved up to 49 degrees just because the stone's much larger out here, and it actually moves the stone up, you know. So I'm not changing the mast height, so the angle will change some. So it won't be any issue as long as I do all the facets the same and don't change the mast height for any of them. So as I go around, you'll see that the angle will change some, but it should be within a degree. When it comes to the crown and brilliance, you know, you have a lot of latitude in the angles you cut at, much less so in the pavilion of a stone. The culet is kind of critical what the angles are. So you can look at that, and we've finished this side of the first row. So those are ready for polish. So it didn't take too long, even though I was making the facets bigger. The lightning lamp actually cuts pretty well. These two facets will be the broadest part of the stone, so as you can see, our angle is the highest. It shouldn't go higher than this. This is 50.6, whereas back here we started at 48. So I'm going to continue around and finish this row, and we'll get back with you when we start the next row. I've finished the first row that we cut at 48 degrees, so the next step I'm going to pretty much leave it as it was at 30 degrees, and we'll cut that one around, and it looks like I'm going to have room for a fourth row, but I'd have to cut it at maybe 10 or 12 degrees, which is not easy to do. I haven't done it on this machine yet. We'll see how well it does, I guess. Those low angles are just much more difficult to keep the machine cutting them straight. So we're at 30, which is what we cut it at originally. So this should go a little quicker cutting this row. Not trying to make it move up the stone. We're just cutting what we've already cut, so this will probably take half the time. You just want to make sure that when you look at the facet you're cutting, make sure you've cut through all of the previous coarser grit and you have at least a nice smooth texture to the facet. You don't see lines in it, which I still see some. Because when you go to polish, things are not gonna move as quickly as you like. So trying to take scratches out, deeper scratches in the polish using 50,000 is much more difficult to get scratches out. So get them out as much as you can at this phase. Our second row is finished, and it went in well. Our third row was cut at 17 degrees. It's a lot thicker than the others, so I'm going to attempt to cut this one at 17 and then put one more row in, because I would like to keep the table relatively small like it is. So we're set at 17, and I think that's what we cut it at. That's what my notes say. And looks right. So I'll finish cutting this row around, and then we'll come back and see about putting a fourth row in this, because this row of facets is a little bigger than I'd like it to be. So otherwise I'd cut the table a little larger, which I could do, but we'll see about that fourth row and putting it in at 12 degrees. I've got all three rows pre-polished with this 600 lightning lamp. As you can see, the top row here, or the I guess our table breaks, are a little large. You know, our table's a little small, so we're gonna cut the table larger to make this facet a little more like these. Could be a little bit larger. You're pretty much up to you what you do there. You know, and that's one thing I wanted to mention about, you know, a cut like this where I'm cutting my own design, my own pattern. You know, it's important that you learn how to do that. There's a lot of patterns out there that give you a cutting design that you can follow, and it's nice and easy to follow. You know, some of the issues with that, if you don't pick the design correctly, your yield's going to drop significantly. So there is a benefit to creating your own design with each piece of rough. And also, as we've seen with this stone, I've had a couple of different plans for it that actually didn't work out because of the shape of the crown material I had to work with. So originally I was going to do almost a Portuguese style on this, but that didn't work out, and then the crown angles were so low that I ended up just cutting 3 rows. I'd want to do 4 rows, but it's just not going to work with the material I had to work with. So if I was stuck to a design, I'd end up having to create my own design anyway. So it's something important to learn, creating your own patterns. Like I say, you're going to be forced to do it anyway because your material's not going to work out for the pattern you selected. So let's go on, and we're going to cut the table. I've got a 600 lap here, metal, that I'm going to use to cut this table. So I'm going to take this down to 0, and you can see I've gone well past 0 here. So to know where 0 is, I generally cut at 1/100 of a degree just so I know I'm not below 0. And it's only on this Ultratec machine with this dial that you have to be concerned with that. That you know you are exactly, or you're close to 0 rather than being below it. So I think I'm going to stop right there. You know that this top row of facets is a little larger than we'd normally do, but hey, we'll see what it does with the stone. I think it'll be just fine. I like to keep the table kind of small. So I've actually got 2 600 lightning laps here. This one I've used quite a bit, and it cuts significantly smoother than this does, but this cuts a little faster. So I'm going to start out with this one. Because the table facet's so big, you want to get it just as smooth as you can before you go to polish. So that's pretty good. I don't see any deep scratches on it. The scratches that are in it are pretty much all the same. So I've gotten rid of the scratches from the metal lap I used. So I'm going to go ahead and change to the well-worn 600 lap. You know, on a smaller stone, you could use this and polish right from it, but this is a big table on this stone. Again, these lightning laps are new for me. So we'll see if this having a fresh one and a used one works out. Like I say, on something smaller, you probably wouldn't have to worry about it at all. You know, just go from your 600, either one of them, and just go to polish. And that may be as good as we're going to get. So we've changed to the batt lap, little WD-40. Clean the lap off good. And once again, we'll be using 50,000 diamond on the batt lap. Check, see where it's polishing. See, we've got some little crystalline inclusions just below the surface. Hopefully they don't break through, because I don't think in the faceted zone they're going to show, but if they break through the surface here, we'll probably have to cut through them. going on here. So I am applying fairly good pressure on the top here. Just it's such a big table. And again, this is not the recommended technique for polishing tables, doing it vertical like this, but I find it generally better. If you look here, we can see we're polishing a little more to this side. If it were much more to this side than it is, that's when you have to go to the 45-degree table adapter, because we have no ability to adjust this direction with this setup. But I think it's polishing close enough that I can polish through this, even though it's a big table. We'll see. Well, it's getting there, you know, and these big tables always take a lot of time. Still, we're moving this direction. It still needs to be more polished down here. So I do, if you want it to move quicker, you recharge often. going to raise it just a slight bit, just because it's not polishing down here. I mean, by the time I get over here, this will probably be polished, but if I raise it just a couple of hundredths, that may help out. So one thing I found that if, as I normally do, actually held the stone to the lap, it did polish a little quicker for me. It set it flatter to the lap, and the area to the left side of the stone that wasn't polishing, all of a sudden started polishing. So I've been probably at this for 40 minutes. There may have been, it probably should have gone from the 600 to something a little finer. I do have a 1200 lightning lap, but it's not broken in, so I just went ahead and kept polishing here. But probably into this table for 40 minutes. Quite a long time, but it's a big table and a hard stone, so see if we can finish it up here. Still got some very fine scratches. still a couple of issues, so I'm going to give it a good cleaning. So the scratches that are left on it are very fine scratches. So I'm going to try maybe using a little less diamond and I won't say it's perfect, but it's pretty close. And I have those inclusions that are just under the surface, and if I break through one of those, I'm screwed and we'll have to recut this completely. So I'm satisfied with what I've got, and we'll move on to polishing the rest of the crown, which I'm sure will be much easier than this big table was. So the worst part is over. The table is always the most difficult facet to polish. So now I'm going to polish the first row, which I cut at 50. Or a little less, apparently. You know, you just always cut just a very short amount and check, see where you're at. All right. So there's a good reason for good notes, because apparently I cut closer to 48 degrees. Okay, first facet done. Now when we're looking to see how well we're polished, you know, what we're looking for is what I refer to as the Twilight Zone. It's that zone between light and dark, when you get the light reflecting off the stone and it's bright. I don't know if you can show that there. And then as it goes to dark, you can kind of see when that changes, it's where you see best, when you can see the scratches best. So just move the light around. You know, you often have to reposition the light to get it right on different angles. But it's just very critical getting that the light positioned and look at it in the right angle from the facet, so you can actually see that whole facet and spot the scratches. So this next one should be quicker now that I know exactly what angle I cut at, with any luck here. Okay, that one's done. And one technique I use when I'm cutting these, I'm a counter. So I typically count to 50 and use that as a reference when I know how long it took me to polish one facet. I know it's going to be similar on another facet. It's going to change as you wear down the diamond that's on this lap. But it's just a reference point with me when I count to just an idea how long I should leave it down. Because the more you look at it, the slower it makes you. So I'll finish this off camera. There's not, it's going to be much the same thing. Now I may polish the girdle on this. There's been some controversy between me and a few other cutters about polishing the girdle, and my opinion is that the girdle has no effect on brilliance whatsoever. I mean, the angles, there's no way that they're actually reflecting in the light coming back out the stone, in my opinion. So polishing the girdle is kind of up to you. I do often polish girdles on a very expensive stone. I like to have it more finished off, so it does give it a more finished look. On darker stones, it tends to show up more easily. It'll be hard to see on this stone that it's not polished until you look closely. So reasons you wouldn't polish is if there's inclusions that you know are in the girdle or close by. I have had stones where the last facet that I polished on the stone, the last girdle facet, it actually chipped out. So I have a few bad memories of polishing girdles. So again, it's up to you. There'll be no effect on the brilliance of the stone, but the overall beauty of the stone, some people may think that it's a more finished look and that you should do it. So it's your choice. I'll look at this and decide whether to polish it or not. And we'll see you when we've got this all polished and take a look at it. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments box if you have questions about polishing or anything about cutting, and I'll try to get back to you and help you all I can. One more thing, I have a new discovery, something I found while cutting a facet. There's some inclusions which you'll see in the picture attached, that these crystals, as you cut through them, they release part of their material, which is a different hardness, and it causes kind of a comet-looking imperfection in the surface. And as long as that inclusion is there, you just keep dragging it across. No matter what direction you turn the lap on, it just drags the material with the lap and leaves this line across it. So what I found, I've seen this before. Sometimes you just, you get it the best you can and you leave it. But a technique that actually worked really well, it got rid of it completely, was to turn the machine on as slow as it goes and just rub it really fast across it. So basically you're given this the inclusion material that's causing the streak, you're not giving it a single direction to go in. Just a little bit left. Because we're running so slow, it does take a lot of time, but it is getting rid of those lines. So I finished this facet that had the crystal inclusions that were causing these comet-like scratches across the surface. And this technique worked really well. I found I had to add a little lubricant for it to be totally effective, but I pretty much got rid of those comets. And now I'm going to finish the last two facets, and in the next video we'll bottle this up, get it off the DOP, and reveal what our finished stone is. If you enjoyed this video, watch the next video here. Also subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications of our latest gem-related videos. Thanks.